I'm far more accustomed talking with 4-year-olds or to 4-year-olds than I am about them. But my topic, A Sensory Childhood, my subtitle is How Children, I thought this was less interesting, but I'll say it to you, How Children Engage Their Senses as They Take in Their World. Because this topic requires me to talk about some children that I've known. And so I'm going to start by telling you about me. As a youngster, as a grade school child, and I remember working on a spelling list. I remember having this very challenging word, encyclopedia, because there were just too many letters, all these letters. And somewhere in this experience, I recalled that an aunt, actually she was an old aunt, told me how she had learned to spell Constantinople. That's really an old word, as you know. And here's how she learned to spell Constantinople. C-O-N, con, with the stand, with the sty, with the constanti, with the steeple, with the stopple, with the Constantinople. Isn't that something? I never, well, thank you. I'd never forgotten it. And so, I thought if I used that kind of sing-songy technique, I might be able to master encyclopedia. And so I'm very happy to tell you, to this very day, when I spell encyclopedia, here's how it sounds to me. E-N-C-Y-C-L-O-P-E-D-I-A. I was a quick learner, and I was a good student. I was a good reader. I was even on the honor roll. And so it was a big surprise to me as a mom when my very bright young son, John, also a quick learner and a very eager student, had so much trouble when he was trying to learn to read. The thing about it was he didn't like it. He wasn't interested, and he wasn't very good at it. And so, like so many of us parents who really don't know how to solve a problem like this or what to do, I just thought, well, we'll spend more time and, we'll work harder at it and we'll buy more books. So we did. We bought more books. I even bought a book. The name of my book was What to Do When You Love to Read and Your Child Can't or Doesn't. And the truth of it is it was many years and several more children, not my own, but several other children I had a chance to work with before I figured out what would really help. So I want to tell you a little bit about those children. And they're the ones that Mark told you I work with. For a long time now, I've had the privilege of working at this fabulous local preschool named Escuela. And yes, Escuela means school, and we teach a little Spanish. But what we really do, marvelously, is we invite children to come into this learning environment, exquisite learning environment, and they get to engage their senses as they take in the world. Because honestly, this is what learning is. We engage our senses. In preschool, however, you call these learning environments, you call them stations. And so over here we might have a building station. Maybe it's been a while since you've been to preschool. There's a little building area with blocks and Legos, and there's puzzles and books and games, and there's a sensory area. We've got Play-Doh and a water table and things like that. And over here in the back we have the art supplies. There are things like crayons and paints and glitter glue, and it's just marvelous. And then there's a tunnel and, oh my goodness, a slide and even a monkey bar. My favorite actually was always the dress-ups, though. That's where the costumes were. And that's where we could turn this space into something kind of magical. Sometimes it would be a kitchen, but sometimes it would be a pet store or, a fire station or even a space station. And how this would work, how this does work, it worked like this just this last week because we opened the doors and 25 4-year-olds just come in. They come in and they find something in this wonderful array of things to choose from. They find something that's magically interesting, marvelously interesting for them. And before long, they have figured it out, they've invented it, they've tried it, they've really discovered something extremely interesting for them. Children are so eager and so willing and so open to trying that they really get what the adventure of learning is all about. So I want you to imagine what this looks like. You have a whole room of children within minutes has found what they love to do, and they kind of settle in, And those of us who teach are always really happy when this happens. They settle in, and I'm going to use the word, they engage. They engage their senses to take in their world. And to the outside observer, it looks like play. It looks like they're playing. And you know, we even call it free play. And you might think, well, this is a filler, you know, this is the time we just sort of waste until the real learning takes place and the kids get to come to the front of the room where a grown-up will tell them, well, the important stuff, you know, math and science and all those other facts. And they can't wait to go home and tell their parents about the facts they learned today. It's really an interesting thing. I remember, I'm going to tell you the first time that it occurred to me, because we asked these 4-year-olds, well, tell me what you do at Thanksgiving. Now just think about that for a minute. The last time you had Thanksgiving, you were 3. And it would never have occurred to you that this is this is something I got to pay attention to so I can tell my teachers next year what we do at Thanksgiving. It's so odd when you don't think about learning through the eyes of a child. It's a whole different ballgame. There's a marvelous expert, Bev Boz is her name, I love her work, and she had this to say about experiential learning. She said, experience is not just the best teacher, it is the only teacher. And then she goes on to quote Jean Piaget, every time we teach a child something, we keep him from inventing it himself. That which we allow him to discover by himself will remain with him. It will remain with him, kind of like spelling encyclopedia. And so this moment of discovery, you know, it's one of those perks you get when you're an educator, because sometimes you get to be there when that discovery happens. It's just a glorious moment. Well, I know you've probably done this too. You have a little yellow paint over here, and you have a little red paint over here, and then they mush together, and you know what you get? You get orange. You get orange every time, and it's an aha moment. One of my favorite stories, it's very simple. Violet was a little girl who hadn't talked much, and you know, I hadn't really found much to share with her, so we hadn't really connected. But one day she's writing the alphabet letters out, and she said to me, do you know every time I write the letter V, W comes after it? Well, who knew? You know, there it is. After that, we had all kinds of fascinating conversations. And then there was this little boy named Evan, who was by far the most polite interrupter I'd ever met. Because he would say, excuse me, teacher, excuse me, I just need to have you come and I just need to have you come so I can show you my new trick. So I followed him over to the monkey bars, and he hopped up on the bottom rung, and he swung his legs around, and I said, okay, Evan, I'm ready. And he said, well, that's it. And it was it. And it is it, because, you know, we do know when we've made a connection, when for us we've become aware, or we've tapped into something, there's a click. I don't know, it's just there. The truth kind of jumps out at us. And the thing about truth for children and for us, the truth of it is that we all have the same equipment, all have the same machinery to do this discovery, to have these experiences. We all have 3 primary senses that we take our world in with. We call one of them our visual awareness, our visual modality. That's how we see. And we call one of them our auditory mode. You know, that's what we hear and what we say. The saying is important because if you're like me, you're never quite sure what you're thinking until you say it out loud. Think about that for a minute. Anyway, kinesthetic is just about everything else. It's what we do when we touch something, and we feel it, and we jump, and we run, and we move. And you know, when you watch little children, after a while you'll say, okay, now I know what they mean about kinesthetic. Because they are at that age. Children are very, very kinesthetic at 4 and for many years thereafter. Young children really do need to touch and to move if they are to learn. And the funny thing about all these modalities, these ways of bringing in information, our brain just kind of knows which one we need. So if we need to choose between the red and blue crayon, we would use our visual sense, right? And if we wanted to know what the teacher really meant by our inside voices as opposed to our outside voices, loud and soft, we'd need to use our auditory memory, our auditory sense. And you will never know what squishy means without your kinesthetic mode. Really. However, if we use all three of these, we get a much better success. And then when we can use all three, it works to everybody's advantage. I want to tell you about this cool thing we do in my school called visual phonics. And we've had it for so long that I don't even know who to give credit for. But here's how it works. The letters of the alphabet have a name. Like the letter B, we identify as a letter B. But the sound it makes is different. It sounds like this, ba. So we add a gesture, ba. And the gesture and the sound are alike, ba, ba, ba. Or the letter P, the sound is pa, pa. And the letter W, it looks like this, wa, wa. You know, I just think this is really a slick thing. It's not exactly sign language. I like to think of it more as choreography for the alphabet. But it does make sense. And you probably knew this. You probably knew that some of us have to see something, some of us have to learn something, have to hear something, and some of us have to do something before we kind of get it. And so I'm going to take you up to this advanced level now. I'm going to kick this up a notch because it may even be more complicated than that. There's a woman by the name of Donna Markova who has the idea that, who suggests that we not only take information in a certain way, a preferred way, we may actually process it a certain way, and we may then have it expressed, or we store it in a certain way. Now see, this is kind of an interesting thing. When I told you about my son John, when I figured out that all three modes work, or that he may not be primarily a visual learner, I was able to help him with his reading. And how we did it, very simple, we read out loud. We added auditory mode. And then we also used our finger to go across the printed page. So you could add all three. But learning is often a three-step process. I like to think of it as kind of a loop that has to be connected. There's the input portion. Did I say that right? Input. There's the processing portion, and then there's the output. Or in some cases when it just goes right on through. That happens sometimes too. It might be helpful for you to think of yourself as having your very own operating system. And it is specific to you and very, very personal. Unique, very unique. And there might be as many as 6 different ways all of us learn. Now, I happen to think that I am a visual first, kinesthetic processing. I bring information in visually, I process kinesthetically, and then I express it auditorily. I don't know if you've noticed, but I really do better if I can have something to look at. And then I do have to move while I think. And I will talk something to death at the far end. That's just kind of who I am. But, you know, a different combination of letters would be perhaps something that you are. And I don't know, maybe you're kind of curious about what kind of a learner you might be. So I have a little experiment for you. And here's how we're going to do this. I'm going to need you to close your eyes. So would everybody please close their eyes? All right, and on the count of 3, well, maybe not even 3. We'll just do it. Okay, I'm going to have you spell the word school out loud. Okay, let's do it together. Here we go. S-C-H-O-O-L. Okay, you can open your eyes. Yeah, we were able to do that. Did you notice? All of us were able to do that. My question for you is, how did you know? How did you know how? Not everybody has the same answer. Some of you might have seen a schoolhouse. Did anybody see a schoolhouse? Don't raise your hand. Yeah, did you? Some of you might have seen a school bus. I see a school bus when I do this sometimes. Did you? Some people actually see the letter school, and they see it in a variety of ways. Yeah, I've had people tell me that, you know, and then I'd say to you, do you see it in cursive or print? Is it in big black bold letters, or perhaps in, you know, red crayon? I've done this with a lot of children, and it's always intriguing to me how amazed they are that how they see school is not the same as how their neighbor might see school. And they're even more interested when they didn't see any letters at all. And here's what I think is happening. When you see letters, if you see something, my guess is you're probably a visual learner, or there's some part of you that does that in your visual mode. And lucky for you, because school is mostly taught by way of the visual mode. And if you are an auditory learner, you probably did all right in school too, because sometimes in classes we actually discuss things. But if you're a kinesthetic learner, chances are that you didn't do very well at all. And think about this for just a minute. If you're a primarily kinesthetic learner, you would come in to a classroom and you'd be told to sit still and listen. Isn't that amazing? Sit still and listen. And these women who taught me this marvelous experiment, which I love to share, my hairdresser likes this experiment. I think this is so interesting. Anyway, what I think is really unique about that is these women were all dancers. They were primarily modern dancers, very, very kinesthetic, and I think I was the only one in the room that day that actually saw anything. They described for me the experience of pulling information out as being, sort of like dropping their head and they have to kind of just move it, pull it out of their innards, and that it was really a hard thing to do. They told me that they were not very good spellers, maybe not very good students, and many of them had been diagnosed with ADD or ADHD because, well, that's just what happens. So this is a lot of information, and I'm not sure I know what you're going to do with it. I can tell that some of you are still processing. And that's okay. I'm a gradual processor too. But what I'd like you to do is keep thinking about it, because these are things we do need to think about. We do need to notice about ourselves and also the people around us. It appears to be different for more of us than we maybe realize. And I think this is kind of the point I'd really like to make, is that this is a very serious subject. Here's why. Our schools are in big trouble, and we're losing an awful lot of students. We seem to be way more interested in our mode of testing materials than we are in our mode of teaching them. And I think it would be a great idea for all of us to take a sensory appreciation course. We need a sensory overhaul. I don't mean to make a pun, but then again I do. I'm going to tell you that I think it makes sense that how we learn in preschool is how we learn throughout life. I think we would all like to be lifelong learners. So it would be good for you to use your senses. Frankly, that's all any of us have to work with here. Use your senses, because you've seen and we've seen and we've heard what doesn't work. It's time that we do something that does, and it's quite simple. We just need to advocate for children, because if it's not right for children, it's just not right. And every child I know desperately needs and deserves a sensory-filled childhood. Thank you.
View this program again at freetv.org, on Community Access Channel 12, or order a copy, info@freetv.org or 258-8767.